Hello everyone and welcome. I'm here with Amy and Jen, who are doing a plenary talk tomorrow morning. And we're going to get started by having them tell us a little bit about themselves and their background and what they're going to be talking about tomorrow.
Go for it, Jen.
Hello, I'm Jen Roos, and I'm a lecturer in digital education at the University of Edinburgh. I am interested in a lot of things around distance learning and online learning, more recently about MOOCs and stuff like that. And the talk tomorrow is about mess in online learning and why we should maybe embrace that more than we currently do at this moment in time in online education. Go, Amy.
I'm Amy Collier, and I like mess. Actually, I do like mess, but I am from Stanford University. I'm the Director of Digital Learning Initiatives at Stanford, and I run an instructional design team that works with faculty to design online courses. That includes blended courses, that includes MOOCs, so we work pretty hands-on with faculty every day. My academic background is social sciences, so I have a social science background. I'm a qualitative researcher, which, in these day and ages, we're a dying breed. But I'm trying to bring that aspect of the research to the science of learning that's happening right now in the MOOC space and in the online learning space. So that's what I do.
Oh yeah, and I should have said that I am the director of the Masters in Digital Education program at the University of Edinburgh, which is a big online distance program.
It's very fancy.
And it's very fancy, yeah.
Don't we love our titles?
Yes. Is that what you wanted to know about our past?
Do you want
something more sorted?
Yeah.
You do have quite a good rapport going on, so I feel like there's many more good stories.
That's true.
Give us the professional side. I guess you have to attend in the morning to get the humorous
Yeah,
side,
if you want to come in the morning, we'll be dishing the dirt.
Yes.
So what do we mean by mess?
Well, mess is anything that is kind of maybe not controlled. Maybe it's something that, the definitions are so varied, and each of us has our own definition for it. You probably think about when you were a kid, or maybe somebody told you something about being a mess, or, whatever it is. All of us have this kind of reaction to the word mess. And what it means is very much dependent on how we ourselves define it. But we believe it's also a space or a way in which we can think about creativity and diversity of opinions and thoughts and learning. And so for us, it's a space of really interesting conversations and discourse, and we hope to explore that.
Yeah, we've noticed, and one of the reasons that we wanted to give this talk is that even though we're both working in quite different sort of national contexts, and there are different things going on in e-learning in the US versus the UK, there's a shared sense that both of us have that we're at a kind of moment in online education where speed and simplicity and efficiency and tidiness and order are kind of being sold to us and to educators.
Literally sold
to us and to other educators and researchers and learning technologists as the way to think about fixing problems of education. And for us, this is just only part of the story. So we're going to try to tell another part of the story tomorrow and give some really, really good examples.
Yes. So don't miss it.
So how do you help people so that they can sort of be comfortable? I mean, people are fearful about what the future brings, and they're not sure how to balance everything that's going on. How do you tell them to handle some of those things?
I think a lot of it's just being willing to accept. It's hard for us to say, now here's how you incorporate mess into your university classroom, whatever it is. But I think you can maybe help people just to be more reflexive about the spaces that they are encouraging their students to be part of, the communities they're encouraging their students to be part of, and being willing to maybe step aside sometimes and let those things happen without your control and without your oversight and without your need to be involved in them and to consistently assess them. But maybe actually it's about letting students kind of go in their own directions, and we have some good examples of that we'll share tomorrow, of allowing for the mess, just being comfortable with the mess and accepting it and thinking about it in a really critical way about what are the ways in which this uncovers issues of justice, and what are the ways in which mess uncovers issues of diversity and power and relationships and things like that.
Yeah, I think that people are getting a bit tired of hearing all the time that, all the problems that they have in their classroom or in their education more broadly could be solved if only, we could just figure out how something works and then apply it consistently. And, these are these are things that seem right when you kind of hear them, and then when you're in practice, either in in teaching or in technology or in other spaces, it so quickly breaks down because it doesn't really take account of how the world actually is.
Right.
The world is messy, people are quite messy, learning is incredibly messy, and these are just sort of facts of life, right? And our educational practices probably need to take account of them. And I think that is just, it's not really so much about getting people to become more messy or invite new kinds of mess. It's about acknowledging the mess that's already there and accepting that as a good part of what it is to be teaching and learning, not a problem that has to be solved.
Right.
Because I think that the other piece that both of you bring is that you're very open. You share a lot of resources, you have a great social presence, and you're willing to sort of give to the community. Is that hard for you to sort of put yourself out there when you think about this environment that we consider messy? And I mean, we know who you are. Just walking up, it was like, oh, I know. And I feel like I have that connection. Meanwhile, you've never seen me before.
Yeah, that's particularly weird in relation to teaching a MOOC, actually, which is an experience that I've had over the last year. That feeling that you are sort of out there, as you say, in a way that means that people can know you at some level without you necessarily knowing them, is quite an interesting feature of working in this space and working in quite a public way. I guess that I don't know why, I just really like this story. We had students on the MOOC making digital artifacts and making digital stuff all through the MOOC. This is the e-learning and digital cultures MOOC, and the final assignment was to make a digital artifact. And one of the participants on the MOOC made this game of Pac-Man where the tutors on the MOOC, my colleagues and myself, were all characters in the game. And I was, for some reason, designated Pac-Man. So there's this game out there on the internet, which is like me, my head, like Pac-Man, chasing my colleagues around and eating them like ghosts.
I'm going to go play that game.
Okay, you should.
Right after this interview. Immediately following this interview, I'm going.
Yeah, and I guess
It'll be like a high hit.
I guess the point is, like all other resources on the internet, I consider my online presence as a resource for other people to use. I don't think it's really me. It's a sort of representation of me, and I'm not hiding things, but I'm not I wouldn't say I feel particularly exposed by the stuff that I share. But it is a bit weird when people start doing things with that presence, because it isn't really me. It's my avatar, my image, my digital presence is something that can be remixed, and just like any other web resource. And that's kind of, well, what is that? It's kind of good.
It is.
But kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's one of those things where you have to kind of think about it for a bit and say, I mean, we had a long conversation this morning, in fact, about the fact that somebody had tweeted a picture of me that I didn't really know, one, that they had taken, and then two, that they were going to tweet it. And fortunately, I was just working very hard at the time, and, it wasn't a picture of me doing karaoke or anything. But still.
Which she also did.
They also did. But, I do think it's right that there's this tension between the control that you want to have over your image, your identity, who you are on the web, who you are in person, and yet at the same time, one of the greatest values of the open web, if you will, is that you don't really have control, and that those things that could end up being the most interesting and rich and connective are things that you probably didn't have a lot of control over, and that's okay. There's a picture right now of Jen and I being tweeted out where somebody removed the background and people are adding new backgrounds to it as we speak. That's great.
Yeah.
But,
no, it is.
Great. It really is. But it's one of those things where, because of the fact that we don't have any control over it, we're actually forming some interesting connections with people we don't know. It's kind of opening up new conversations. So, it's...
But that really poses a big question. I mean, when we talk to our students at various ages, like, we don't want certain pictures of certain things to go out about them. So that ability to use media to change some of those things, to Photoshop, they could turn it into something that you really would never want someone to see of you.
Yeah.
That isn't a real image of you to start with.
That's right.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that this is the sort of area where adults and young people are this is a sort of boundary area where there's a lot of work still to do for people to figure out what it means to have digital presence, persistent digital presence, and I think that it's just something that we'll all have to figure out over the coming years.
Right, because both of you, I would say, are still pretty young, and you have a really...
That's so nice. Thank you. We like you, Sandra. We really do.
But so, I mean, I think that you have a long career ahead of you, but you're very well known. Like when people see your names, people know who you are within our community.
Yeah.
And it's like, it is amazing because people want to be with you, or people want their picture taken, or people want to be your friend, or
They want their picture taken with us, like we're a zoo exhibit.
I can't say that's ever happened, but I'm sure it will. It will, won't it? Tomorrow, probably.
Oh, tomorrow when you're in the session. And
yeah, they'll be like, hey, can we get your picture? No. Yes, you're absolutely right, but I think the important point about that is what you were saying, that in this particular field, both of us have a little bit of a reputation, but maybe the case is that that's going to be more and more people's experience as more communities move online, that people will, be known within that small online community. And I don't know, I'm just reminded of Dana Boyd's work about network publics and how these ideas of privacy are shifting, but they don't become less important. It's not like young people don't care about privacy; they just think about privacy in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I guess that's the same. Yeah, for all of us. Did I just say all of us again? I think I did. Yeah, all of us, everyone.
One of us.
So you also have the career roundtable tomorrow.
Oh,
yeah,
yes, that's right. We do.
Yeah, Roland Moe's organizing that. Have you talked to him?
No, I have not.
He's lovely.
Really interesting guy.
Yes.
I was really pleased to be asked, actually, although I realized that I didn't really know anything about how to have a career in educational technology, because the way that my career has come about has been I consider it to be quite non-standard.
Right.
And then I thought about that some more and thought, well, actually, I bet that's everyone's experience of being
Well, how did your career come about?
Well, I started out doing kind of web design stuff, and somebody within a university knew that I did that and asked me to come and do some web stuff with them. And then I took a couple of courses about digital e-learning and digital culture and digital environments, and then I sort of realized that my own background's in literature. I realized that there was something quite good about the digital education space because it kind of combined things that I liked, my interest in language and text and the things that I had from my degree, plus my interest in technology. And it's really amazing how many English Lit grads there are in digital education. It's weird, isn't it?
That is weird.
Yeah. What about you,
Not
Amy?
Musicians.
Yeah.
Musicians are also quite big in edtech.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Yeah.
Oh, what about me?
What about
me? So I was working I was doing my graduate work and working as a grad assistant for a program that was going fully online. And so I was a TA and a program assistant for this program, and I had the experience of going through with this entire unit the process of moving a program online. And this was back in 2004. And so, there had been some, standards established and things. People had done this before, but we were still kind of blazing the trail, particularly in our field, in family sciences. And so it was a really illuminating experience to see both the pedagogy side of it, the thinking about how do we do this online, but then there was also the instructional design piece, and then there was also kind of the program level, like how do we do accountability stuff, how do we talk to other departments about what we're doing, how does this make sense in the broader university context. And so I had the opportunity to be part of those conversations even as a grad student, which I thought was a wonderful opportunity, and I'm very grateful for it. As I was finishing up my PhD, I had the decision to make about whether I wanted to go into teaching full-time, be a professor somewhere, or go into a different career path. And I'd been teaching for a while and loved it very much, but just decided to try something that sounded kind of out there and just go for it. And I got involved in faculty development. I took on a position as the director of the Center for Teaching and Learning at Texas Wesleyan University, which was just down the road from where I was. Being kind of a brand new grad and not having much experience in managing a team or running a center, being given a center to start from the ground up and trusted by my manager to just do that was incredibly liberating. And so I had the chance to kind of try things, make a few steps forward, go, ooh, that's not the way I want to go, and go with it. So I had a lot of freedom to kind of move around in my profession, figure out what does it mean to be in this field at this moment with this particular group of faculty, with this particular group of people in my department, and that was wonderful and informative, and that's led me to where I am today at Stanford.
Right, so both of you sort of went through unique paths to get where you are.
Yeah, but I really, and actually, I took the opportunity because I knew we were going to do this roundtable to ask colleagues. There was a conference earlier this week in Edinburgh, the Network Learning Conference, which was one of the big conferences that looks at the sort of theory of online learning, and that was really interesting and full of people who are working in this field as senior academics and people who are, much further along in their career than me. And so I was asking people questions about what their experience of being an academic in this field is and what advice they would give to other people. And I don't think it's really giving too much away to share the key finding from that informal poll of people, which is that because there's so many different paths that you could take as an academic in this field, I think Amy and I are actually case in point of just how different a career can be, which starts out with a similar kind of PhD interest in technology kind of thing. You kind of have to decide which of those paths you're going to start out on and shape the things you do accordingly. So if you want to work, for example, in a traditional academic department, in a sociology department or something like that, you have to consider what's expected within that department. If you're going to work in this psychology, if you're going to work in the School of Education, again, you need to kind of tune in to what those expectations are. If you're going to work in an academic support team or in an information services department, there'll be a different set of expectations that people who are working in that field, in that area, will expect to see from a young academic or someone who's coming up. And so it's really a question of kind of identifying what your strengths are and what you're good at and what you want to do, and then trying to tailor your decisions about what you do from there based on where you want to eventually end up. And I just thought that was really interesting because there are so many academic careers where I don't think it's actually true, mind you, but I think that there's a sort of idea of what you have to do. You publish, you do certain kinds of research, you do certain kind of work with people, and then you end up as an academic in that field. But I think to be an academic in learning technology field involves a lot more options, really. And so that's what I learned.
It reminds me of some of the pieces that we've been reading in preparation for our plenary tomorrow about how so much of...
You're going to bring this back to mess, aren't you?
I am going to bring us back to mess.
See how she did that?
We all like mess.
Full circle.
Nice job.
Full circle. So much of what we read is talked about either in research or in teaching, or in this case probably our academic professions or the professions that we have chosen. So much of how the paths within those get hidden, because we don't want to acknowledge the mess of getting to the point where we are now, where probably in Jen's career path that was unique to her own experiences and her choices and her values, there was a lot of time where there was doubt and opportunity,
random,
things that maybe it's even hard to recognize as something that was structured and organized, because it probably wasn't. It was probably luck and mess and indecisiveness and maybe some tears and things that are messy and difficult to acknowledge. And it's so easy, I think, for us in education to hide those things or to not really think about them critically. And so you have people doing research and they get to the end point of the research and they report that out to everybody, but they don't talk about the mess involved in getting to the point of the end of the research and how they dealt with the mess and how they talked about the mess. It's usually hidden. It's not in our academic publications.
That's true.
Same with our careers. We don't know from most faculty that we talk to what their path was getting there.
No,
what were the messes
probably wasn't
involved.
straightforward.
All right, and they probably don't talk to their students about the mess of getting to where they were. And so I think, again, I just to bring it back to mess a little bit, I think mess is something that as we talk more and more about it, we start to pull out the things that make us really special, the things that make the work we do, the research we do, the teaching, and our professional careers really, really special, because those are where the interesting parts live, is in the mess. It's in the stories of ourselves.
I really love that, because I think that hits home so much with the people that I've had a chance to talk to, not necessarily on tape, but their jobs are changing, they're uncertain about their future, they don't know where things are going to go, and that does provide a lot of fear, because for many of them, they thought, I was going to be in this position until I retire, I just do these steps and this happens, and so to move into what do I do next, or how do I continue to grow, or how do I get those development pieces is a huge sort of nervous knot for them. And really embracing that and finding your passion and where you're motivated, I think is huge, and getting that confidence and hearing that it's okay to feel those things. Because I think that in a sense in their minds they're the leaders, they're the ones who prepare people for their futures, and it's very scary.
That's right. That's right. You know, there's a beautiful piece, we'll actually reference it tomorrow in our session, a beautiful piece kind of on this topic, although it's not really on mess, but it's kind of on this intersection of the identities of who we are and how we got where we are. It's called The Borderlands. It's by Gloria Anzaldúa, and she talks about her growing up in an area of kind of where the border of two countries met, and how her both physical identity and her cultural identity were living kind of in this area she calls the borderlands, and how navigating those identities is really, really messy and tricky. And I think the framing of borderlands is one I really love for talking about anything from mess in research and mess in teaching to how we got to where we are today as professionals, because a lot of times these things happen at the borderlands and the intersection of our identities, and how we navigate that, and what choices we make about which identities we're really going to pull from, which ones we're going to push back. Those are all really important decisions that we should be thinking about, and acknowledging at least that we made some of those decisions.
Yeah, I guess that what you said made me think also that there's another dimension of mess that I think is really important, which is the political dimension of the work that we do and the place that we're in. You know, to an extent, I agree that individual academics or learning technologists have some control over what they individually do in their career, but I think there's also a broader context in which we're working in higher education at the moment, which requires a collective response, not just that each individual is sort of taking responsibility for managing change and being, you know, their own brand and all of that stuff, because that takes us out of a place in which we can work collectively to ensure that the conditions in higher education are compatible with a good life, and will continue to be compatible with a good life going forward. And so, yeah, I don't know, I was like, I was kind of found myself agreeing, and then I thought, well, actually, there's more to it than just what I as an individual decide to do. There's so many factors that are outside individual people's control, and I guess that part of the mess, the embrace of mess, is recognizing that we can't control everything that happens to us, and that doesn't mean we have to say, oh well, we'll just live with perpetual change and that's how it is, and you know, nothing can ever be any different. Sometimes it's a call for us to consider together what we want for ourselves in our careers, and
For education in this case.
How education should be. Yeah. That's a little grim, but well, actually, no.
No, it's actually very hopeful.
Yeah, it's
like
quite
that.
hopeful.
It's quite
Yeah,
hopeful.
yeah.
I'm not sure I'm sold on your hopefulness there. You're like, I don't know.
Wait,
Amy's like, yes, you are.
Can we do anything about this? Wait a minute. Yeah.
We have to believe we can.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, why are we here?
Yeah.
Well, I think that so much of life is how we look at it, too. So, I mean, embracing mess, which is the whole country's in a mess. I mean, we're going through a lot of change. And so it's like it's only natural that we lead there, too. So how do we embrace it? How do we look at things? Can we look at things as an opportunity instead of a problem?
And I'll push back a little on mess as utopian too, right? We don't think that the state of mess is the way we want to be either, right? Like there's this. I guess what Jen and I are really pushing for is just critical discourse on as we continue to move forward in education, our culture, and our relationships. Acknowledging where spaces that are messy are vibrant and interesting and full of possibilities, while at the same time not letting the messy parts that are destructive or unjust, that's right, not letting those things also remain as they are just because we're accepting mess.
Yeah.
And so there's, one of the things we want to make sure we do tomorrow and kind of in the future too is just to not idealize either thing, not idealizing structure, but also not idealizing mess, and figuring out what can our culture look like when it's not too far one way or the other.
But in a way, we don't really have to worry about that, because there's always going to be that tension between the the push to order, to order and standardization and all of that stuff, and the push towards more complexity and mess. So I think that actually it's just the right moment to be having this conversation and to be giving this particular talk, because we're at a moment where the pendulum is swung quite far towards, structure and order and all of that stuff. And so now it's time for it to swing back the other way, but of course it will keep moving.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you.
We're so excited. I can't wait to get up in the morning and come and hear what you have to say.
I feel like more prepared for tomorrow than I did half an hour ago, so that's good as
that's
well,
nice
doesn't
to
it?
hear.
It's good to just kind of talk with some of these things with somebody who hasn't been having this conversation with us for the last 6 months.
It really just has been us for the last 6 months, so it's nice to kind of talk to somebody else.
It is, yeah.
It was great talking with you, and
Thank
it's
you very
exciting
much.
to actually meet you in person.
And
me
you,
too.
thanks so much. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.